Hiya and welcome to Brain Injury Bites, where we provide help and advice for people after a brain injury. My name's Brooke and I've lived with a traumatic brain injury since 2007.
Hi, I'm Ashwini and I'm a trustee at Headway Warrington. I'm also a senior associate solicitor focusing on catastrophic injury, including brain injury. So in this episode, we're going to be looking more at the issue of coming to terms with the brain injury and the impact of a brain injury. And I think, certainly from my experience of working with a number of people with brain injury, it's a very important step in someone's recovery to gain that insight, because without it, it's very difficult for that person to understand how their brain injury has impacted them and the way that they function, their personality, etc., and also to then go on to accept support and really make progress with their recovery. And I wonder, Brooke, how did you find that process? I mean, did it take you some time to come to terms with what happened to you?
I don't know if I've accepted it yet. I'm definitely well on my way to accepting it, but sometimes I don't know if I've fully accepted it. But it's one of those things that, like, initially you're in hospital and things kind of going okay, and then you can exist in that space, for quite a long time. And during the early days, you don't really realise what's wrong with you, and I think a first sign when your brain starts to work is you'll start to look into what's happened to you and find out what the implication that's going to have on the rest of your life. And with that comes like a massive wave of depression. And that's something that doctors will look out for, is people getting depressed. And
yes, we talked about in an earlier episode about the fake environment that you're in when you're in hospital, and people are putting those structures in place for you. So you think you're doing really well, and you are doing really well. It's not that you're not at all, but it's a very different kind of environment. And then I suppose, when you're discharged out of hospital, that's when all of a sudden that shock can come into place, that actually things are harder than I thought they would be. I thought I was doing really, really well, and now I'm really struggling.
One thing that you don't realise is that everything in hospital is planned and structured, but that's done for you. And you might have it's like being at school again. You get a timetable, but you might have physiotherapy, and then later on you'll have psychology, and you'll have occupational therapy. You have all these things, but what you realise is although you've done all these things, they're all spaced apart. Like, I used to have physiotherapy, physiotherapy is tended to be in an afternoon, or something like quite cognitively demanding, like psychology would be. You do that first thing, and you don't realise that all your life has been it's been on a timetable, and it's been pre-planned. Like, for instance, your schooling, you had a school timetable, didn't you? But even you never thought about it. You just turned up in the morning, but all your lessons were pre-planned. But when you get sent home, and you might be looking forward to going home like mad, but you get home, and then very quickly you realise that a day is a long time to fill, and before you've got rehab in place, it's I tended to really suffer because I'd never had any thoughts about planning the day, doing what to do first, what to do. I should do anything cognitive in the morning. I should do physical things in the afternoon. I shouldn't rest too late. It was just kind of. I used to go to bed just randomly in the day, and then I would go to bed randomly at night, late at night, and that would impact on my sleeping at night. I wouldn't be able to sleep, and then it would just carry on to the next day. So with that, I was just something that I suffered with was fatigue, and it just gave me massive depression, because I just thought, there was no, I was doing so well in hospital. But obviously, hospital's not a real environment. It's not a real not a real scenario, and you don't realise that all that planning that was gone into your hospital stay, you have to then do that for yourself when you're getting out into the real world.
Yeah. And also, I guess, I hate to use the word normal, but in the normal scheme of things, let's say you have a physical injury, you break your leg, you go to hospital, you have maybe an operation and some physio, etc., and then you're discharged, and you know that it'll take a certain amount of time for that leg to recover, but as long as you carry on mobilizing it, doing your physio, it will recover, it will get better. And I think certainly when people talk about brain injuries, quite often we talk about a 2-3 year recovery period for the most gains in recovery, but that can be quite misleading, can't it?
Yeah, there's anything like a break in a bone. There's a lot of knowledge about most injuries, about how long they take to recover from, and when you'll get the strength back, and what you've got to do to get that strength back. But the brain's like it's not fully understood yet, and there's quite a way off being fully understood. And that's one thing that got me. Yeah, it was. You hear a lot that you've got like a brain injury takes 3 years to recover, and then after that, it's the strategies and the techniques that you put in place to cover for the functions that you've lost. I used to cling on to that really much, really, really badly. I thought after 3 years I'll be well. I remember it right up until the last day. And when I wasn't ready the next day, what happened to me was I fell into quite a big depression, because I was just pinning my hopes on that 3 year cut-off point.
Yeah, I think for the benefit of our listeners as well, it would just help to explain that the sort of the initial 2 to 3 years, and there's a bit of a range of opinion on that, but that's really in relation to when the brain makes the most recovery following a traumatic brain injury. But after that period, the recovery tends to what we call plateau. So the rate of recovery slows down, but it's not to say that that's it. Your brain can continue to make a recovery, and I'm sure you feel that you are still recovering in many ways.
What I would say to anyone was, you've got to use your brain. The only times that I've ever plateaued or gone backwards is when I've stopped. I'm trying to avoid the word believe, but I've stopped believing in myself. You definitely have to challenge yourself. The way I did it is by pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I started doing something that I've never, ever done in my life before, and that was public speaking. And it was just, I did it. The first one I did was for a local headway group in Scarborough. Shout out to the Yorkshire Coast Headway group. But it just started off me telling my story, and I just got quite a buzz out of it. I just think it's something that I then started doing. I started going. My auntie worked for the local council, and I got into speaking about road safety with the local authorities.
I know certainly from supporting a number of people with brain injury, particularly after an accident, is that there is that impatience quite often to try and get back to what was before, get back to work in particular, get back to life as it was. And it can be very difficult for those individuals, and certainly I've seen it over the number of years that I've been working with them, that it's coming to terms with almost the new you, and coming to terms with how your brain injury has affected your ability to do certain things. And it's not to say that you can't do them, but you might not be able to do them in the same way or as well as before. And it's about finding ways to compensate for that, and strategies around it. But that can be quite challenging in itself, because it can really speak to your sense of identity, your sense of self. And that must be very difficult to come to terms with.
I was often told that I could do anything I wanted to do. I suppose that was a way by my occupational therapist of telling me, trying to give me more self-confidence. And what I've come to learn is that you can't do anything you wanted to do anymore, but you'll be surprised at what you can do. You just got to do it in a different way. Like, for instance, I was massively affected by fatigue, and in ways 15 years on I still am. And I found that what I need to do is it's like drip feeding. I do little things at a time. Like, I've done a lot of blog writing and stuff. What I can't do is I can't write a full blog in one go. Like, I can't sit for a few hours and just write one in one go. But what if I do it in like half an hour increments, or then break for have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever, and do it in little bits like that. I can produce some quite good stuff. But nothing good is going to come when you're fatigued. So if you start to feel yourself getting fatigued, I think there's a time to stop.
Yeah, but I think, coming back to the issue of coming to terms with brain injury, you've set out there your strategy of how you deal with it. But before you can even set that strategy out, the bigger issue is actually accepting that the way you can do something like sit down and write a piece has changed because of your brain injury and because of the effect of that. And it's incredibly difficult, I'm sure, to come to terms with. That's
one of the ways in which I've not really accepted it, is that I still think I can do more than I can. But I'll still sit down with the full intention of sitting down for writing for like 3 or 4 hours, and you get about half an hour into it and then you just drift off.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about some of the people I've supported as well, I often think it's quite a fine balance, and often brings up very interesting ethical questions as well. Thinking about people who are really keen to get back to work, but perhaps can't go back to work straight away because of their injuries, because ultimately, if we sent them back to work, we could be setting them up to fail, and that could then plunge them into greater depression. Rather than trying to instead put together strategies, grade it, work with the employers, so that we can make that return to work as meaningful as possible. But there does need to be that acceptance that help is required to get there.
There's a thing with employers as well. For instance, I worked at a bar immediately before my injury, and I wanted to get back to doing. I didn't like sitting at home, and I wanted to get back to doing something. And I just went out to helping out in the stockroom, moving boxes of beer and stuff about. But my boss was like, he just thought he used to get a little bit tired, and he just thought, it's a few weeks and I'll be back. Once I get my stamina back up, and that was like nearly 13 years ago now. So it's people need to, especially with people returning to work, they do need to be more knowledgeable about it, because employers might just think, they get a little bit tired and, therefore need maybe more rests, but it's not really about that. There is so much more to traumatic brain injury than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some people are lucky to have sympathetic employers who are willing to accommodate and find alternative roles, or just, change the role for that individual. But, we also know that that's not always possible. For so
a lot
many
of people
reasons.
are,
Yeah. I suppose another thing to bear in mind is the importance of celebrating improvements, celebrating steps in recovery. It doesn't have to always be about the big wins. Even just, something that you could do today that you couldn't do a few days ago could be really key. Did you go through any of that in your recovery? Did you keep a log of what you were doing, or did anyone else kind of point that out to you?
I suppose I've been quite hard on myself. My psychologist always told me that I always refuse to give myself praise, but I think rather than, as opposed to celebrating, just acknowledgement, acceptance. The thing is, when you're recovering, some of the progress will be so slow, because you see yourself every day, so you don't notice the difference between one day to the next. And it's not till when you see somebody that you haven't seen for, let's say, 6 months or a year even, that they will notice how much better you were than you were before.
Yeah, you're right. You don't see it yourself, but someone else might notice that you've managed to get through a whole conversation, for example, or, you know, you've managed to sit down and watch a film, or, you know, just...
Yeah, you don't notice that you can't get through a full conversation because you're yourself, so you don't notice.
I suppose thinking back to this idea of a fake environment in hospital, I'm sure when you were in hospital and you were making those baby steps of recovery, that you'd get a lot of praise from the nursing staff and the clinicians around you. But once you were discharged home, then presumably that went.
When you get home, when you're discharged from hospital, something that you've been looking for so long, one thing that you used to get when you were in hospital was encouragement. You'd be encouraged on every step of your recovery. But like obviously when you get home, that stops. And obviously when you leave hospital, that's when your recovery really starts, to be honest. And because you're no longer in that fake environment, you have to kind of fend for yourself.
So that's probably when you need that encouragement the most.
It is, yeah. And there's nobody there to give you it.
I suppose it's perhaps a helpful tip that we could give to anyone supporting someone with a brain injury is to make sure that those milestones are celebrated, that encouragement is given at every turn. Yeah. It's not just about the big things. But
they can when you're out there in the wild on your own, you can easily forget that you're making progress.
Yeah. And it's important as well to try and maintain a focus on the positives, which I know is easier said than done, but it really can help to go forwards. I remember a while ago, a good few years ago, having a discussion with a case manager, and it was always interesting to me because from a litigation point of view, we always look at what somebody can't do to formulate the case. But as a case manager, she was telling me that actually I'm more interested in what someone can do. Yeah. And because my job is to maximise that as much as possible and really help them to celebrate those wins. And I think it's important that, you know, we do take time to focus on the positives.
And I told you about people being very prone to depression. If you focus on what they can't do all the time, that's going to tip them over the edge, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose in terms of help and advice we can give to our listeners who might be coming to terms with their own brain injuries, or family and friends who are supporting someone through brain injury, acceptance is huge. That's probably the first step. But, you know, it's okay also if you don't fully accept it and you yourself have said you're not sure if you've really come to terms with it.
No.
That's okay. But it's important to accept that...
You have to accept there's something wrong with you and you know that it's not going to be an overnight fix.
There's no magic pill, despite what the internet might try and sell you. And I guess, you know, accept this, that something's wrong, or that there is a need for help and support, and to find ways of coping, accepting that help and support. But don't rush through things either. You know, your brain has just suffered a huge insult and it needs its time to recover. It's okay to take things slowly. It's okay to just, you know, go at a slower pace if that helps you to...
And that is going to help you as well if you take things slowly.
Yeah.
It talks about that drip feeding thing. You can only handle so much information at any one time. So if you give yourself small amounts to deal with, then you can deal with them a lot better than you can a big amount.
And finally, as we said before, it's important for family and friends to encourage someone who's coming to terms with brain injury, who's recovering from a brain injury, help them notice the improvements that they're making, so that they can accept those changes, and remind them that it's, you know, the importance of being patient, that it's okay, that it's not all magically fixed straight away, that it's not an overnight recovery. Join us for the next episode when we'll be discussing socialising after brain injury. Make sure you check out the footnotes for more help, advice and resources.